All right, so we'll get started. Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining today's insight session on Acumen. My name is Lou Cuneo. I'm with the Deltek PPM sales team based out of Georgetown, Texas. And my colleague, Jared Maloney, is actually based out of Round Rock, and he's one of our senior solutions engineers who will be presenting today on Acumen. Some housekeeping rules. We have about 20 minutes for this session, so we're going to do the presentation at the end. I'll open it up for 5 minutes for Q&A, but I encourage everyone to chat over any questions that come up in the chat window, and we'll be sure to try to address them at the end of the session. All right, with that, I will turn it over to you, Jared.
Absolutely. Thanks, Lou. So, as he mentioned, it is going to be a very quick moving session. There's not really a way for me to show you all of Acumen in 20 minutes. And given there may be some various levels of exposure to the product coming in, my goal here really is to show some of the folks that may be seeing it for the first time, the art of the possible of what you can do with Acumen, but also to give some of you who are active users some takeaways that you can get out of a short session and things you might be able to take and then use in the product moving forward. So that's really the general idea of what I plan to walk through here in the 15 to 20 minute. As Lou mentioned, I will try to leave some time at the end for questions, but I would encourage you, if there are certain topics that you want me to make sure I hit on as we go through, feel free to put those in the chat. And Lou, if you can keep an eye on that and just kind of pass those along, I'm happy to take guidance as we go through here. There are a lot of layers within Acumen. I think the main overarching thing is it's all around schedule quality and schedule performance. So when we talk about Acumen, we're looking at not only making sure that the schedule is of sound quality, but also tracking that performance throughout the project lifecycle, as well as factoring in risks through Monte Carlo simulations and giving the opportunity to optimize the schedule using the 360 component where you would run a series of what if scenarios to find the most impactful way to target a milestone and rein it back in. So I'm going to try to get to as much of that as I can given the time. Most of what I'll cover is going to be in the diagnostics area and really focusing on some of the things that I think help set Acumen apart from other tools out there that you may use currently. That said, I'm going to transition over into the software, and Lou, if you can just confirm that did show Acumen when I made that transition.
Yep, sure do.
Excellent. I'm going to turn off my camera for a moment as I turn my head to my other screen here, and we'll get started. So as a starting point, just to explain all of what I've done so far, I've imported a series of open plan schedules. So I did these through our own Deltek open plan BK3 files. I have a baseline as well as 3 subsequent updates. Acumen is, of course, compatible with P6 as well as Microsoft Project and our own open plan tool. So I went and used these for today. I think one of the really high points that I want to make sure I get across in this short amount of time here is that the depth of the metrics within Acumen. It's certainly one of the driving factors that sets it apart in the marketplace. There's a number of ways that you can run very basic schedule diagnostics things, even within scheduling tools like P6 and getting some of those output reports or some of the other tools out there. But where Acumen takes it to another level is really the ability to define what criteria you want to use to evaluate the schedule and giving you all of the ability to create your own metrics, put together your own bundles, or even just sort through different categories like the ones that you can see at the bottom of my screen here, where maybe you want to look at specific logic metrics or specific float metrics and find alternate paths that may be secondary but could be very important. By default, it's just on our schedule quality metrics that you can see I've highlighted here at the bottom, just doing best practice checks for things like missing logic, negative float, etc. Of course, any of these we want to identify what we're looking at and where we're tracking for them. We can click on that box and see visually where they occur in our timeline, and we can get the list of all of the hits that we have for these for these metrics. So it's not just going to give you the overall, here's a score. It's going to give you that detail behind it so that you can go in and address these issues, or maybe you need to send that report back to a subcontractor or wherever you received it to get some explanation that goes beyond just a list of, hey, you've got some missing logic within the schedule. Now we're looking at just one schedule right now. You can view this over trends, and I'll show you some of that here in a second. But I did want to at least touch on the where you can go with the metrics and get additional information, where you can create your own bundles. We like our schedule quality metrics. We think they're great, but most of our clients that I work with that have heavily adopted Acumen have some sort of their own standards that they've put together, and they've done that within the tool, and they have it open up to that by default. So I'm going to walk through that just at a high level, especially for some of you who maybe have access to Acumen but haven't taken that step to create these. It's a pretty simple process. All of the detail behind the metrics can be found on our metrics tab here. This is the same area of the tool that we use to define these metrics, to create them and put them together. I'm going to go ahead and create a new group that we'll just call, actually, I'm going to do this. I'm going to create these based on looking at performance, just to do something a little different. Most of the time when people think of Acumen, we think schedule quality, and a lot of times it doesn't go beyond that, but there are a number of performance-based metrics within the tool that you can use to track things like how your duration performance looks, if you have early starts, late starts, that type of thing. So I'll go ahead and create just a small sampling of some of those metrics and piece them together to show you functionally how it works within Acumen. To do that, I'm going to pull a couple of these. All of these are just cut and paste, so it's pretty simple to take these out of our library. There's well over 400 metrics within Acumen now, so it's not your responsibility to go in and create all these yourself. There's usually at least the foundation of what most people are trying to track within Acumen. I'm going to take some of the duration ones. We'll do took longer than planned for duration comparison, took less than planned. Those can help us isolate maybe a certain type of work that either continues to come in under or over the durations from the schedule. Lets us know if we maybe need to adjust the way we look at those. We can also look at activities that have completed ahead of time, completed behind. These can just be important checks as you go throughout the project. You're receiving the updates. I mentioned earlier, I've got 4 different versions of this schedule. Thus far, we've really just looked at the most recent. I'll back the view up in a second and let us look at all of them. Maybe I just want to take these here. We'll look at some of the completed work, and then we'll grab a couple of maybe early starts and late starts just to give you the idea of what this looks like. But again, these could be, maybe you want to take 8 of our schedule quality ones and add a couple more on top for specific projects. You can create as many of these ribbons as you like. I have a number of clients we work with that'll have 3 or 4 different ones that pertain to maybe different programs that they're on, or different contracts that have different requirements. So once we do that, we've created this little bundle here in the metrics tab. We'll go over to diagnostics, and we'll go ahead and create a new view. By clicking that, you can see it'll clear out the metrics we had before. I'll go ahead and name it performance, since that's what I named when I created it in the metrics tab. Now, since I generated those, you'll see those over here on the left in our full metric library that you have access to. And I'm just going to right click and add those to each. You'll see the ones that I selected as I went through that process. And when I run this, right now, it's going to look at all 4 of these schedules. So you can see my time now. These are very early in the process. And the baseline one, for example, isn't going to give us any detail because I don't have anything that's been completed or gives me any performance data. But if I look at, say, the most recent one, I do have 5 delayed starts. I've got some activities that have completed delayed. I don't have much work done here. It looks like I've only got a couple of activities that have actually completed, but it does allow me to identify, say, for example, this one that completed delayed. If I click on that box, I can see in this case, it completed delayed, not too far off though, just a 1 day difference in the finish and the baseline finish, but helps me isolate those as I receive the monthly updates so that I can see, how is the performance looking. And I just use this as my example of a bundle to put together that I find helpful. Those same metrics can be found in the pre-done bundles like completed. I just like to isolate them and make them a little bit more of a simplified view, and allow you to define what's important to you, because that certainly varies amongst our client group. So the only other thing I'll mention on metrics before I go to some other topics here, we do have different ways to save these metric sets, what we call metric template files. So once you get the one you like, you can have it open to this as your default. But to that end, we also have some industry standard ones like the DECA metrics that you can use for DCMA checks. I strongly encourage you, if that is of importance, to attend Rob Edwards' session, which I believe comes up here coming up shortly after mine. I think it's within the next hour on DECA metrics, and he can give you an in-depth look at that, as well as a deeper dive into generally how we use the metric engine behind Acumen to get to some of those. So that said, I know we've got just about maybe 5 more minutes of me walking through the software, and then we'll open it to questions. Lou, has anything come in on chat that I need to address before I shift gears a little bit?
No, nothing yet.
Okay, great. So the other thing I'll mention, for those who maybe don't have experience with Acumen, I've pulled these 4 different updates of a schedule, and we've looked at some trends on schedule quality. If I wanted to see how things are progressing over time with the quality of the schedule, whether it's looking at the various float numbers. In my case, I've got negative float getting higher as we go throughout the process, or maybe I want to add some sort of tracker to look at near float, near critical items. I can look at some of my low float details here, maybe see how those look, or I could even pull in some of the high float numbers as well. But this could allow you to view trends of how a progression looks in quality. You can look at those trends in performance that we talked about, but you can also identify anything that's changed over time within one click. This can be really helpful for people who are doing this in cumbersome reports or through some sort of manual process. As you receive those updates, you can see I've got all 4 of mine loaded here. I've just chosen added removed activities as my example. I've got 3 of them that were added, or actually it looks like they were in the first 3 and they were removed from my latest update. So this will help me identify anything that's changed, whether it's relationship changes, calendar changes, critical path changes. Any of that can be loaded within one click and published out to Excel. So I just wanted to make a quick mention of that, given that I have multiple projects loaded here. Got about maybe 3 minutes left, and I do want to at least just touch on risk. I would be remiss to not at least mention that component as we do an Acumen walkthrough here. So we can go ahead and transition over there. What I did to set this up, given that I knew there'd be some time limitations, I went ahead and ran a couple of scenarios on my latest schedule here. So just to explain what I've done and show you some of the reporting that you can get out of this, because I think that the end in mind is really what I want to make sure to highlight here. I've taken my schedule, looking at the remaining durations. I've assigned uncertainty throughout the plan, and I did that using what we call our duration uncertainty sliders. These are basically setting 3-point estimates on each of my durations based on how we feel about their potential performance. Now, we may use data such as that duration performance that I was looking at earlier, or some of the existing performance for our ongoing plans, or maybe it's just historicals. I've moved some of these into a red here, as you can see, basically saying we think those are more at risk of coming in late. And I've put a couple as potential opportunities. Now, in addition to uncertainty, I also went ahead and took the extra step to pull in a risk register and align some discrete risks with the tasks within my schedule. I did that at the at a high level, basically just at the WBS level that you see here. You can do it down to the activity level. I just did that for the sake of simplicity, given the time we have here today. And I think the key really is to show you some of the reporting that you can get out of this. I'll start with the exposure histogram on just the overall project. I could view this at any level of the plan, whether it's a certain WBS section, whether it's a certain activity, or even a certain category, if you've got some fields that you want to view it by. In my case, I'm looking at the overall performance of the schedule. Looks like I had a deterministic finish date in the plan of November 2021. And it looks like most of them are coming in beyond that, many of them in what could be a significant delay. At my 80% confidence level, looks like we're looking at about 100-day delay impact based on the model that we've run. So that'll give you the what to be concerned about, but really where you take it to the next level is going to be looking at the drivers of that behavior and how you might be able to enact some sort of mitigation to get around that. So if we look at our tornado charts of showing what's causing that 100-day potential delay, in my case, risk 10 is our biggest driver of that delay, followed by the uncertainty that we put in. Now, the uncertainty may be a little bit harder to avoid. That's just going to be general uncertainty within the plan. So it's hard to give a direct mitigation approach to that. But maybe we take risk 10 or risk 9, which is still has a pretty significant head start on the other ones. And we target those with some sort of plan or resource that we might be able to use to avoid whatever those risks end up being. Really, the idea here is to prevent you from using resources to avoid something that may have a small impact, even though it may be a vocal concern, and really target those that within the structure of the schedule are truly going to impact and cause you problems, and just give you a guide there and a way to report back out of, hey, here's the things that we really see having an impact as we go through. So I know that was all really quick. I wanted to make sure and at least touch on the metrics and get some of the risk reporting. I didn't have time to get into acceleration, but if anyone on the call is interested in learning more about that, we're certainly happy to sync up with you offline and walk you through how that works, as well as expand on any of these that I've covered at a very quick walkthrough level. So I know we've got 3 minutes left, so I'll go ahead and pause there, and I'll stop the screen share and just open it up to any questions. If anyone wants to submit anything in chat, we can certainly unmute you as well if you have something verbal. Other than that, like I said, we're happy to follow up. I know it's a challenge to cover a software with so many components in a total of 15 minutes. So I really wanted to focus on the metrics and then some of the risk reporting, but a lot there to take in, I'm sure. So
yeah, if there's any questions, obviously you can type it in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and ask them. I know that was a fast session, but hopefully it got you a little bit of information that you can think about, and you can reach out to us directly if there's a need for us to set up a one-on-one. I don't see any questions that have come through, Jared. So.
All right. Good deal. Well, we'll give it maybe one more minute here, and then I'll also show, there is the slide that I'm supposed to show at the end of all these. Let me get that up here. I'm sure no one on the call has seen this yet. Let's see, screen share. There we go. And this is the just staying connected within Insight slide. I guess the main takeaway I would give, and I know I did this in the middle, if you do have want to get a more in-depth look at metrics and specifically the DECM stuff, Rob does have a session coming up here in, I want to say it's within the next 15 minutes or so. Let me just look. It's about 30 minutes from now. So I would definitely recommend that if you want to get a better understanding of not only DECM, but also just how the engine behind some of those metrics works, if you're if you're into creating your own and doing some of that I was walking through. But other than that, if there's no other questions, certainly thank you all for attending, and I'll I guess pass it back over to you, Lou, to wrap it up in terms of the recording.
Yep. Well, yeah, thanks again, everyone, for joining. I know it's hard to find time in your busy day to get on these meetings, but we really appreciate it. And again, any questions that come up, just feel free to send them over, and we can set up a one-on-one meeting and kind of do a deeper dive. Again, I appreciate everyone's time, and looking forward to the next sessions at Insight. Thanks again.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thanks very much.